Hi, my name is Chris and this is Battle Nonsense. Despite all the improvements Diceley has done to the netcode of Battlefield 4, the hit registration is still one of the biggest problems this game has. You take damage behind cover, see hit markers when you should not, don't get the hit marker when you should, and take way too much damage in a too short time frame. These are all issues every Battlefield 4 player is familiar with. So the netcode initiative is long over and Diceley has moved to the teamwork initiative. But they did not forget about the netcode. You might remember that video I made some time ago where I talked about the problem that the game is collecting damage you inflict on the other player, and then sends this damage of multiple shots all at once to the server and to the other player. Players with outbound packet loss cause this problem. What makes this issue even harder to understand is that players who are suffering from packet loss can still have a ping of 25 milliseconds in the scoreboard. So a high ping kicker that is running on the server does not help you at all with players who have a faulty connection and suffering from packet loss. So after I released that video, I did talk with David Sirland, the CTE producer. I asked him if he could get some sort of hit registration data to display on the client, to help us to track down issues like this, because they really kill the fun. And with the second Teamplay Initiative patch, we now have that additional hit registration data available in the CTE. And I'm going to show you how it works, what it means, and I'm also going to show you a problem we have. So the first thing we want to do is open the network performance overlay, because the additional hit registration data is included in that graph. So we open the console and then type in the network performance overlay command. Or what we could also do is only type in the first two letters and then press the tab key on the keyboard, because this will then trigger autocomplete. And now we see that we have three new entries in the network performance overlay. The first one is fired, the next one is hit client, and the last one is hit server. If you want to disable these three values, then you only need to use the network performance overlay draw projectile graph 0 command. But since this video is about these new functions, we are enabling them again. What we also got in this patch is a new command that allows us to change the position of the network performance overlay. But the command is not working like it is described in the news on the CTE website. I am not sure if this is because of a bug in the function itself, or if the news is simply not up to date with the current state of this command. So it is possible that this command will work differently when the next patch gets released. But as you can see here, it is very easy to change the location simply by entering the X and Y values. If you have now entered the same numbers as I have in the video here and you don't get the network overlay to show up in the same location as it does here in this video, then this is most likely because you are using a different resolution than I am. I'm using 1080p, and when you use the numbers you have seen here, then you get the network performance overlay in this location. If you use a different resolution, then you need to tweak the numbers a bit in order to get it to the same spot. It is very annoying to type in these commands all the time. So if you don't want to do this, then you just need to create a user.cfg file in the installation directory of the Battlefield 4 CTE client on your PC. Inside this file you then write all the commands that you want the game to execute when you play it. If you don't want to create that file on your own, then you just need to have a look in the description. There's a download link to the user.cfg file that you can see here on your screen. The best way to show you what this new data is telling us is by shooting someone. The blue squares that you see here represent the 4 rounds that we fired. The 4 green X's represent the hits that our client has registered, because the hit registration in Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3 is client-side. And the red X indicates that the server confirms that the damage was dealt. When you see a red X, then you should have also seen a hit indicator in your crosshair. So that's pretty straightforward. Blue represents the rounds that you fired, green the hits that your client registered, and red the damage that the server confirmed. When we now play Battlefield 4, then we will see that there's a difference between the amount of hits that the client registered and the amount of hits that the server confirms. We could now think that the server simply rejected these hits. That's surely a possibility for a number of reasons. But there's something else in play here. Here I have two players on an empty server. Both of them have a very good internet connection with a ping of just 25 milliseconds in the scoreboard, and none of them has packet loss. They also have a very low packet queue. So this should be an ideal test case for the best case scenario. Nothing should go wrong here. Let's fire 4 rounds at the other player to see how much damage that causes. And these 4 rounds inflicted 90 very painful damage points. When we have a look at the network performance overlay, then we see that we have 4 blue squares which represent the 4 rounds that we fired. We have 4 green X's which represent the hits that our client registered, and we have 4 red X's which represent the confirmation from the server that the damage was dealt. So everything is working as expected, there was no problem. But let's have a look what happens when we are now firing in full auto. And now it's getting interesting, because as we can see we have 4 blue squares, which means that we have fired 4 rounds. And we also see 4 green X's, and this means the client has registered 4 hits. But we only see 3 red X's, which means that only for 3 of our hits the server has confirmed that damage was dealt. We could now think that the server simply rejected the first hit and it didn't count. But when we have a look at the health of the other player, then we see that he is again down to 10. So the same damage has been dealt as before. This means that the damage of all 4 hits has been sent to the other player and the server has received it. But the server only received 3 packets. This means that the second packet it received included the damage of the first and the second hit. And this is what I've been talking about in that previous video, that it can happen that the damage of multiple rounds gets collected and then sent all at once to the server. And the server then sends this information to the player that has been shot. And this player then feels like he has been taking too much damage from just one shot, because the damage he received was not from one shot, but from multiple shots. We already knew that if a player has outbound packet loss, then this can cause this problem. But it really surprised me to see this occur without even artificially creating packet loss on my client. It will surely be worse if a player is suffering from outbound packet loss, but that it is happening in this case, where 2 players have a very good internet connection and the server is empty, and the server must have been restarted in the last 24 hours because the build is not even that old. This is very strange that we see this problem here. So this makes me believe that there is more that can cause this problem than server degradation and packet loss outbound, because as you can see here there is no packet loss between these 2 clients. In the comments of my previous video that was about this issue, a few people suggested that this is all caused by the 30 Hz, by the 30 updates per second that the server sends to the client and the client sends to the server. So what we have here is the usual increase the tick rate suggestion, which is meant to fix everything that is related to the netcode. But I don't think that this would actually make much of a difference, and here's why. Let's have a look at the L85A2, which is able to fire 750 rounds per minute, which means that every 80 milliseconds it fires a new round. And when I now add the update rate at which the client is sending updates to the server, then it should become clear why the update rate of 30 Hz cannot cause the problem that the damage of multiple rounds is sent all at once. There is always one update for each individual fired round. But 750 rounds per minute is not that much. How about a gun that fires 1000 rounds per minute, like the FAMAS? So that is 1 round every 60 milliseconds. But even for weapons with such high RPM values, the 30 Hz update rate is still able to have 1 update for each individual round. Yet what is very clear when we look at this is that there is very little room for error. So including weapons which have a higher RPM value than 1000 is not a good idea, at least not as long as the update rate is at 30 Hz. The client has always been sending 30 updates per second to the server, in Bad Company, in Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. But it has not always been receiving 30 updates per second. This was introduced by Diceley in the first netcode initiative, and it is called the High Frequency Network Update option. So before the client had the ability to receive updates 30 times per second from the server did collect the damage of multiple rounds quite frequently, as you can see here in this example. This should make it now very clear how bad the idea was to use just 10 updates per second for the communication from the server to the client. So the ability in Battlefield 4 to receive updates as frequently as we are sending updates does help us a lot. What concerns me a bit is that I heard that Battlefield Hardline is going to include a weapon which has an even higher RPM rate than the FAMAS, and with the 30 Hz update rates, that's not going to end well. So as we can see, Diceley is still determined to improve the netcode, improve the hit registration. The introduction of the Hitreg data in the network performance overlay will provide them with the info they need to track down these last problems that ruin the fun for the players. What I've showed you here is just the first version. The developers have said that we will see improvements and changes very soon. If you want to help them to gather more data, then join the CTE. And when you use the network performance overlay, then keep in mind what I've showed you here. So stay tuned and I will keep you up to date about the progress of the netcode and the Hitreg. If you like my content, then please consider to hit the subscribe button and I might see you next time. Until then, have a nice day and take care. My name is Chris and this was Battle Nonsense.